systems collapse violently. Violently becomes new order. The tax machine had its time. Now it's ours.
Judgment Day.
In theaters now.
All right, America, let's dive right in with a story that has the deep state freaking out. President Trump has dropped a bombshell in his cabinet meeting that has Washington scrambling and the IRS shaking in their boots. Yeah, they need to be shaking in their boots for a change. He announced that America is on track to eliminate the federal income tax entirely. Can I get a round of applause? Yes, I think we need that. Let's go. Let's get that round of applause going. Is my round of applause button not working? I guess it's not. There it is. There it is. Not reduce it, not reform it, eliminate it, and then replace it with tariff revenue that's already pouring in at record levels. Now, let me tell you why this matters and why the establishment's freaking out. Because for over a century, the income tax has been the federal government's weapon of control. It funds a bureaucracy that spies on you, regulates you, and punishes you for success. The IRS has been weaponized against conservatives, against small businesses, against anyone who dares challenge the regime. But tonight, that's all changing. Trump has announced that tariff revenue hit $195 billion in fiscal year 2025. That's up over 250% from the previous year. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick confirmed the goal: no income tax for anyone earning under $150,000. And that's only the start. The Fair Tax Act, H.R. 25, it's sitting in Congress right now, introduced January 3rd with Warren Davidson and a growing coalition all ready to abolish the IRS entirely. Meanwhile, the agency's already lost 25% of its workforce. The machine is being dismantled piece by piece. And breaking right now from the markets, AmeriCorps Resources, trading as AMCOF in the United States and AMCO in Canada, just closed a major acquisition. They have secured the Trinity Silver project from Newmont, and Newmont actually became a shareholder in the deal. When a nearly $100 billion mining giant takes a stake, that's a big signal. Now, Trinity is a historic Nevada silver mine with over 5 million ounces already produced and historical data pointing to 28 million ounces still in the ground. The stock still trades under 25 cents. Can you believe that? And AmeriCorps already has just under 800,000 ounces in stockpile. At $50 silver, that's 40 million in contained metal. Now, silver is hitting all-time highs. Find out more at the link in the description. We thank them for supporting this program. But here's where it gets even bigger. Like I said, there's already a bill in Congress. It's H.R. 25, the Fair Tax Act of 2025, that would abolish the IRS entirely and replace income tax with a simple national sales tax. Representative Warren Davidson, he's the co-sponsor. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick confirmed earlier this year the administration wants to eliminate income tax for anyone earning $150,000 and the IRS workforce slashed by 26%. Over 25,000 employees gone. That's not speculation anymore. This is a coordinated dismantling of that bureaucracy. And here's President Trump in the cabinet meeting. Now listen, DC Drano points out that if Trump replaces federal income tax with tariffs, he will go down as the greatest president in U.S. history since George Washington. Now this is what he said in the cabinet meeting just 24 hours ago.
Refunds out of the tariff. Next year is projected to be the largest tax refund season ever. And we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars. And we're going to be giving a nice dividend to the people, in addition to reducing debt. As you know, I inherited a lot of debt, but it's peanuts compared to the kind of numbers we're talking about. So we're going to be making a dividend to the people, and additionally, we're going to be able to reduce debt. And as time goes by, over the next 2, 3, 4 years, those numbers are going to go up. And I believe that at some point in the not too distant future, you won't even have income tax to pay.
Yes.
Because the money we're taking in is so great, it's so enormous, that you're not going to have income tax to pay. Whether you get rid of it or just keep it around for fun or have it really low, much lower than it is now, but you won't be paying income tax.
He said keep it around for fun. Now, I could kind of see how this could play out. You see, they've been fighting Trump on his tariffs. They want to destroy his economic agenda. They want to see Americans suffer. They want to keep us under their heel. That's the goal of the establishment. That's the goal of the globalists. They want you suffering. They want you dependent. President Trump, what he's doing by putting these tariffs in place is he's bringing in all this revenue. And then to go ahead and then cancel the IRS completely, that removes the authoritarian boot heel off the neck of every single American. And they can't have that. So if Trump continues to have economic wins with respect to tariffs, and then we have a bill that's introduced, or maybe it's an executive order, like they did with the Department of Education. I was there. I was in the East Room when they signed that bill with Linda McMahon. It was an amazing thing. I certainly hope that he would sign an executive order and turn the IRS into a closet, all right, in the in the archives building with one guy working there. That's what I'd like to see. But of course, the deep state, the bureaucrats, the entrenched bureaucracy, they would not want that to happen. It's a control mechanism. So you can bet tooth and nail that those who want to continue to enslave you would fight this. Now, President Trump, though, this is not this was just 24 hours ago. Now, this is what he said in September.
And they had the
Now, I want to point out that, see, this is an ongoing narrative that President Trump has presented. And last time I was at the White House, that was one of the main questions that I wanted to ask, and we'll get to that in a moment. But finally, we're seeing movement on this front.
How historic these tariffs have been, bringing in revenue, additional revenue for our country. You've also mentioned before they could possibly replace federal income tax.
Possible.
Do you think that's
Someday it's possible. It used to be. So if you go back to 1913 is when they ended tariffs. We were the richest ever from 1850. It was all tariffs. We didn't have income taxes. From 1850 to 1913. In the 1887s, about 1887, they had the Great National Tariff Act. And it was a group of people that got together because our country was so rich, they didn't know what to do with the money. We had so much money, they didn't know what to do. It was a group of very prominent people that were set up to hand out money to everybody because we were the richest we ever were. Proportionately, we were in 1887, around that time, even in 1913. We ended them in 1913. How did that work out? And then we went to the income tax system, and then we had the Depression. And by the way, a lot of people try and say that, oh, tariffs with the Depression. No, they ended in 1913, and then we went to income tax, and then in 1929 you had the Depression. They did try and bring it back in 1931-32, but the Depression had long started, and this poor, beautiful nation was gone. It was gone. We suffered for 25 years. It took 25, 30 years to really recover from the Depression. And we don't ever want to see that happen again. The tariffs are vital to the success of this country. When I say I ended 7 wars, at least half of those wars were ended because of the power of tariffs. I was able to say, well, we're not doing any business with you, or if you're going to war, we're putting a big tariff on you. And all of a sudden they announced that the war was settled. I settled 7 different wars, one going 31 years, look at the Congo and Rwanda, look at that, 31 years.
You know, I don't think there'll ever be a president as great as this, knowing how to leverage tariffs to bring about peace. I mean, who's ever done that? And can any future president even hold a flame to what this man is doing? I mean, it's sad that in 2028, this administration will come to an end. I just hope that the next torchbearer has what it takes.
10 million people dead. I got it settled. And a little bit of that one, less than in some cases, had to do with trade and had to do with tariffs. So, you know, tariffs are vital to our country. And just so you know, other countries use them on us. But I just use them a lot better. We're in a much better position. We have trillions of dollars coming into our country. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be a very poor nation, and we would be taken advantage of by every other nation in the world, friend and foe. We're not going to let that happen. And we have a very, very big case in the Supreme Court. I can only say this. Our country has a chance to be unbelievably rich again, but it can also be unbelievably poor again. If we don't win that case, our country is going to suffer so greatly. Yeah,
and then we have this. This is just a couple days ago. President Trump says he may completely cut income tax.
Countries who have been ripped for the next couple of years, I think, will substantially be cutting, and maybe cutting out completely, but we'll be cutting income tax. Could be almost completely cutting it because the money we're taking in is going to be so large. And yet, other countries who have been ripping us off for many, many years, and many years they've just been ripping us to shreds for the next couple of...
Let me take you back to July, this summer. The narrative was still simmering at that point. And here's Howard Lutnick announcing that we're bringing in $700 billion in tariff revenue already.
MJ that market, that's going to have export.
MJ Truth Ultra says, remember, several months ago, the magic number tariff income needs to reach in order to cut income tax to zero for those making $150,000 or less was $750 billion. We're almost there. And now, as President Trump has just announced, we are way past that point. So the trigger has been pulled, and that's why this conversation is being had again.
Get those markets amazing, right? $700 billion a year. That's just net new money the government never had before. So you take that every year for 10 years, that's $7 trillion. And then what they're not counting is the way the president is smashing open these markets. You got every market, right? Japan, Indonesia, Vietnam, you name the deal he does, and he opens that market. That's going to have export growth, right? Never before has our ag and our industrials actually had access to these markets. You know, we're meeting later today with the European Union. You know, the president's goal, get those markets open for Americans to export to them. And that growth is going to pay for everything. It makes Americans richer. And, of course, our tax revenues go up the right way by Americans making more money by winning in business. So that
winning, winning, winning. Are you tired of winning yet? Trump dropping the biggest bomb, economic bomb of the century. The U.S. may completely eliminate income tax because tariff revenue will replace it. That is a death sentence for the old system, and the globalists heard it loud and clear. And we have this. In April, when tariffs cut in, many people's income tax will be substantially reduced, maybe even completely eliminated. Focus will be on people making less than $200,000 a year. Also, massive numbers of jobs are already being created with new plants and factories currently being built or planned. It will be a bonanza for America. The external revenue service is happening. That was the declaration President Trump made in April. Now, I want to go to this other point. This was in August. President Trump surprises the nation with a bold statement suggesting tariffs could potentially eliminate income taxes.
And it's possible we'll do a complete tax cut because I think the tariffs will be enough to cut all of the income tax. Now, we have a lot of debt that's been left to us, unfortunately, over many years. We'll take care of that. But the tariffs, if people only understood the tariffs, we're going to be giving people of this country a tremendous tax cut. And we're going to start with people making less than $200,000 a year.
So this is a narrative that's been ongoing, and now it is being amplified. Let me get to the video. Here is when I grilled the Treasury Secretary outside the West Wing on IRS fraud. And that there's no law for a Form 1040. Now, he had just finished a news hit in those green tents. That's where they do those hits. When you see him on Fox or CNN. Now he's walking up to the gaggle location.
Mr. Secretary, can you answer?
Secretary, Dissent?
Please.
He's going to do two questions.
Secretary Dissent, now just some quick backstory on this. I was there about 7:45 in the morning at the White House in the press briefing room, holding my position, and the Treasury Secretary arrived with Caroline Leavitt. They hosted their press briefing that morning, I was standing right there in the front, impossible to miss me. And as I was leaving the White House, this is probably about 5, I think maybe 6:30 in the evening. So it was a very long day. And I had already resigned to leave and pack up and go, do my show prep. And then I noticed this gaggle forming, and I saw the Treasury Secretary, and I already had a question ready for him in the briefing room. And finally he showed up, and he saw me standing there. Obviously he saw me standing there in front of him that morning, never getting called on. So finally I get my chance.
Late Aaron Russo's America Freedom to Fascism showed Congressman Ron Paul admitting no law requires a Form 1040, yet the IRS targeted folks like Special Agent Joseph Bannister and IRS Agent Sherry Peel Jackson with criminal persecution. With whistleblowers Shapley and Ziegler in Treasury leadership, will your team probe IRS fraud, unlawful wage seizures, political targeting of IRS enforcement, and or IRS enforcement of Americans never been made.
Now, this is when the White House decided to step in and try to redirect and push off my question, and the press started getting hostile because my question was long, trying to get all my points out to lead up to the question. But then this miracle happens.
No, I want to answer this. This is important. And look, Gary and Joe are patriots. They are heroes. And I brought them into Treasury because I found out that they were being, after they came forward in the Hunter Biden whistleblowing scandal, they were being harassed at the IRS. So I brought them into Treasury. They're going to spend a year making sure that that no one's rights are violated, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Then they're going to give me a fulsome report, and they're going to go back and assume leadership positions at the IRS.
Howard Lutnick said on CNBC that you are in charge of China, and he is in charge.
So that was a historic moment, not just for me, but for people who have been attacked by the IRS, which is now about to disappear. And speaking of taxes, we have this Representative Maxine Waters from California's 43rd District and the ranking member of the House Services Financial Committee is reportedly delinquent on her property taxes for her multi-million-dollar Los Angeles, California mansion. As of December 1st, 2025, Maxine's California residence remains in default with a redemption amount still due totaling $21,000. Despite her recent payment of $19,000 on August 13th, Maxine is also incurring monthly penalties of $300. Maxine is not competent to serve as the ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee when she can't even keep her own house in order. So we're finding out that Maxine Waters isn't paying her taxes. Yeah, and pretty soon you won't have to pay yours either. President Trump dropping the real reset plan laid out the blueprint for the next financial era in plain English. He's talking about replacing the IRS, detonating the debt-based system, and funding America with pure external revenue. Importers burn through the stock-up Dodge. Now they're trapped. Everything they buy gets hit. Tariff revenue about to explode vertically. America becoming a trade-powered superstate. Anyone opposing it is serving hostile foreign interests. If SCOTUS backs this, they're siding with the global parasites, not the American people. This is the keystone to the entire monetary reset. So this is what President Trump, it's a lengthy Truth Social post here. And I'm not going to read it all because it's really, I just basically gave you the Cliff Notes version. But we're going to keep going here because there's more news on this front, so don't go anywhere. Here we have this, October 16th, Representative Warren Davidson shocking a CNN host when he revealed his opinion about the IRS. And I think we're going to agree with him.
Groups more easy. Finally, the Wall Street Journal has a big article this morning, an investigation where they say the Trump administration is preparing sweeping changes at the Internal Revenue Service that will allow the agency to pursue criminal inquiries of left-leaning groups more easily. That's according to people familiar with the matter. A senior IRS official involved in the effort has drawn up a list of potential targets that includes major Democratic donors, some of the people said. I want to play for you what then President Trump in 2019 said about using the IRS to investigate political opponents, and then Senator J.D. Vance said about it. Listen.
I will never allow the IRS to be used as a political weapon.
This is about whether we have functional constitutional government in this country. If the IRS can go after you because of what you think or what you believe or what you do, we'd no longer live in a free country.
So where are you on this, Congressman? Are you sort of with 2019 Donald Trump and previous J.D. Vance on the idea of using the IRS to investigate political opponents?
I'm rooting for the IRS to be closed. I've got a constitutional amendment to repeal the 16th Amendment. I think it's a massive invasion of privacy to collect all this information from citizens in the first place. And so I hope we completely repeal the 16th Amendment and fully close the IRS. Look, we've got lemons. Democrats have chosen to shut the government down. The Trump administration's making lemonade. And one of the areas that we've cut is the IRS. And so I think there's a lot of dead weight there and a lot of people involved in things that really are outside the purview of collecting the revenue for the country. We saw this going back to the Obama administration and with Lois Lerner and others. So it's an agency that can be weaponized, and I think those kinds of agencies should just go away.
I agree 100%. They need to go away. It's long overdue. Continuing with some of the remarks from Howard Lutnick.
Right. Okay, so I said, I think we're going to cut $1 trillion a year in expense. And then I think we can, through tariffs and other means, we're going to get revenues of $1 trillion. Okay?
Incremental revenue.
Incremental revenue.
Yeah.
And we're going to balance the budget.
But sorry, let me just ask one question. How did the tax cuts or the extension of the tax cuts?
They're zero basis. I mean,
zero basis.
Where I was yesterday and where I am tomorrow, it's a tax cut. No, it's not. It's the exact same thing as yesterday is today. To say continuing yesterday tomorrow is like silly.
So let me ask you on tariffs. Having studied it yourself, when there's higher tariffs, people purchase less. Things cost more.
No, we'll talk about tariffs.
Yeah.
Let's just finish. Let's just finish Doge. So I'm in the car with him, right? And I said we're going to balance the budget. And I said, but I have one favor to ask of you. If we can balance the budget for you, will you agree to waive all income tax for every person who makes less than $150,000 a year for the United States of America? Which, by the way, is about 85% of America.
Right.
And the reason you want to work for Donald Trump is he looks at me and goes, sure. Like, you realize the President of the United States said, if you balance the budget, sure. And he's not lying. He's not kidding. He's like, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Let's balance the budget. Let's go. And now President Trump saying it in the cabinet meeting. It's happening, folks. I don't think most people realize that Trump's tariff system has the potential of eliminating the need for the IRS and the Fed. Yes, we need to get rid of the Federal Reserve, give the power back to the Treasury directly. We don't need a middleman printing our money. Let's see. President Trump, despite the massive amount of money being made by the United States of America, hundreds of billions of dollars as a direct result of tariffs being charged to other countries, the full benefit of the tariff has not been calculated in that many of the buyers of goods and products in order to avoid paying the tariffs and short-term stock up by purchasing far more inventory than they can use in order to avoid tariff payments. In short term, the heavy inventory purchase is now, however, wearing thin, and soon tariffs will be paid on everything that applies to. Without avoidance, the amounts payable to the U.S. will skyrocket over and above the already historic level of dollars received. These payments will be record-setting and put our nation on new and unprecedented course. We're already the hottest country anywhere in the world, but this tariff power will bring American national security and wealth, the likes of which has never been seen before. Those opposing us are serving hostile foreign interests that are not aligned with the success, safety, and prosperity of the United States. They couldn't care less about us. I look so much forward to the United States Supreme Court's decision on this urgent and time-sensitive matter so we can continue in an uninterrupted manner to make America great again. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That was in November, President Trump posting that. Let's see, what else have we got in the list here? Top brass at the IRS. This was 48 hours ago posted. Top brass at the IRS tells Congress paying taxes is completely voluntary and that the IRS solely relies on voluntary compliance.
I think as we all know, that our U.S. tax system is a voluntary tax system, and we depend on people willing every year to sit down, fill out that form, and pay their appropriate amount of taxes. So I really think enforcement is a reward to those who voluntarily comply. And I think if the public does not see that the IRS is enforcing the laws, we're going to be at risk of losing people continuing to voluntarily comply.
Losing the risk of people voluntarily complying. Here's a former IRS agent explains why income tax is voluntary and, if enforced, is technically illegal.
There, she was doing very well, had received numerous. Jackson. She is an ex-IRS agent, CPA, fraud examiner. She was working for the IRS. She was on the fast track to success there. She was doing very well, had received numerous awards for all of the work she did, and she realized that there is no law and that the biggest fraud was the IRS.
I tried to be the best at whatever I did. So when I got to the IRS, I hit the ground running. My first year in 1988, I got the fraud award. It's a big Shaped in Georgia award for fraud. But I got numerous awards, and my biggest one is from the IRS commissioner himself. Back in 1995, it was Fred T. Goldberg. One of the things that I wanted to tip you off on as far as what the IRS does, before I get into the story, they had, I don't know what they're doing now, but they had what's called a Market Segment Specialization Program, or MSSP. They would take different market segments, like ministers, and try to figure out how much money you were underreporting. Let's take beauticians, for example. I'm going to audit her beauty shop. She owns the shop and she has some people working there. Based on the assumption that the IRS has that people don't report all of their money, but they like to put all their expenses on there. So granted, all her expenses are on the tax return, and I figure out how many bottles of this and that she bought, I can calculate a dollar figure. So I'll tell Sophia, after it's all over and we're buddy-buddy, I just shock her and I say, well, guess what? It looks like, based on my calculations, that you really brought in $80,000, but you have $50 on the tax return. So here, you owe the IRS back $30,000. What would she do? She would sign off on it. I only had 2 cases in 7.5 years where somebody actually bucked at me. People are so afraid. The government and the media have gotten you guys so afraid of the IRS that you don't even buck them. Now, mind you, she might have left some money off. Maybe there was several times where she just didn't report the cash. And maybe that's why. Maybe she has no idea how much she, quote-unquote, underreported. Maybe that was it. But they always acquiesce. The Gap one, anybody own a laundromat, they have one that will calculate, based on your water bill, how many loads were washed at your laundromat. And the point to all of this is what they do to people, and people just acquiesce to it. When I quit the IRS in 1995, and after maybe a year of being Jim Cleaver and realizing that was just not me, I hung my shingle, which in accounting terms or business terms is you start your own business. Now, you know that picture of Uncle Sam, the one that says Uncle Sam wants you? I used that same picture, and I had it really big, and I says, Uncle Sam wants your money, but I'm a former IRS agent. I'm going to show you how to get it back. You know, the people came running. And then these people start coming to me saying, I keep hearing that we're not supposed to pay tax. Or I keep hearing that the tax law is a fraud. And like I said, I was raised differently. I never would look at that person and say, you're a cuckoo. I wouldn't even think it. It was like, okay, you know, in this back burner back here, I would think to myself, okay, there's some people out there that actually think that the income tax doesn't apply to us, or it's a fraud, or it's being misapplied. But I didn't do anything about it because, remember, I'm rolling around with my little businesses and whatnot. So one night maybe in early June, one of my pastor clients called. It was night. It was about 9 o'clock at night. And she said, you know what? I think it was maybe a Wednesday night, after her Wednesday night service. She said, I've got this parishioner that just keeps bugging me about this income tax. She's talking about that we're not liable for the income tax, and she wants to talk to you. Can I give this lady your telephone number? And I said, okay. So maybe about 10 minutes later, this lady called me. She said, I have a question for you. Are we supposed to pay income tax or not? And I said, okay. Do you want the cuffed answer or do you want the real answer? She said, I want the real answer. I said, well, I really don't know. You know, even though I'm a former IRS agent, I haven't done the research, but I hear that there's a credible body of evidence out there that says that we don't owe the income tax. I was okay. I mean, I took the information. I was sitting there listening like, okay. And, you know, I said, okay, this lady had a lot of information. I don't know where she got it from. So a few weeks later, she called me again and she said, Miss Jackson, remember that information I told you on the phone? It's in the USA Today. Pull it up on the internet. Okay, so I got the USA Today. It was July 7th, 2000. And it says, Dear we the people, most citizens are not required to file an income tax return. the 16th Amendment to the Constitution is a fraud, and if you file, you waive your Fifth Amendment rights. I said, okay, that's some other stuff she was saying. Now, this is a lot of reading. But I kept reading because I was very interested, you know, being a CPA and into fraud and all that. I wanted to see what was going on. So here in the third column, it says no one has been able to collect the $50,000 reward offered by Bill Conklin to anyone that can identify the section of the Internal Revenue Code that makes a typical worker liable for the income tax. I'm serious about winning the $50,000. Okay, so it's at my desk. Basically, I just shoved everything off my desk and got the codes out, the regulations out, the tax guide. I got on the internet to look at the Cornell University site, all these different things, and I started researching. And 2 weeks later, I said to myself, oh my goodness, we have a problem here. It doesn't look like I'm going to win this money. And I was sitting there at my desk thinking, this thing is a fraud. 2 weeks it took me to sit there and realize that. I didn't just look at the positive, I looked at the negative, I looked at the IRS site. All these things are going on. This thing is a fraud. Being a CPA and a former IRS agent, I sat there at the desk, you know, I was by myself, and all these thoughts started going through my head. The first thought was, now I'll finally open up the codes and regulations. Because see, at the IRS, they trained us with these little guides. We didn't use the codes and regulations. We would get one of these, and you would have to read it, understand it, and pass this little test. And all these little guides that I got, I read them, and I made A's on all my tests. And I thought, and I guess the rest of the agents in training thought, that the information that was in here was the same that was in those stick codes and regulations. But it's not necessarily the same. The things that are in these training manuals are not necessarily the same thing as in the codes and regulations. I learned that in my studying. In the time that I was doing the research, I also learned about the Pocket Commission. Now, I'm going to let this go around the room, but y'all got to give it back. This is the outside that I purchased of the Pocket Commission that I had. And before I left, I had the sense of mind to make a copy. This is the little badge I used to flip out at people and say, give me your books and records. Give me your bank statements. Give me all your credit cards, you know. And, you know, people, okay, here. You know, even the counties, I go to the county, do it. I go just about anywhere and flip this little thing out and get whatever I want. You know, there's a lot of power nuts out there doing that, guys. Y'all know it. Half of you already know about it. There's an enforcement pocket commission, and there's a non-enforcement pocket commission. And I started looking back at this thing. It has SER, Southeast Region. First of all, I'll read it. It has my picture up here, and it says, Sherry Jackson, whose signature and picture appear above, is duly commissioned as Internal Revenue Agent and has authority to perform all duties conferred upon such officers under all laws and regulations administered by the Internal Revenue Service, including the authority to investigate and require and receive information as to all matters relating to such laws and regulations. And it has SER and some other numbers and an A. And based on this Internal Revenue Manual, A means administrative. So I'm an administrative clerk out there on the front lines. And I'm an administrative clerk with a non-enforcement pocket commission. Okay, so I'm starting to get angry here. Starting to think about all that. I had to take bribes and get little tape recorders taped to my body and the little microphones on me and go in and take bribes from people. But, you know, thinking about stuff like that, you know, what they got me out here, and I'm thinking I really have authority. And this is administrative, non-enforcement pocket commission. That was one of the other things I thought about.
Her story is absolutely amazing, as is Joe Bannister, and she's one of the people that I asked the Treasury Secretary about. You saw that earlier clip. You see, America, this is the moment. For the first time since 1913, we have a president with the will and the way to end the income tax. Because tariff revenue is exploding. The fair tax is in Congress. The IRS is bleeding personnel. The stars are aligning for the biggest tax revolution in American history. Now, let me bring this home for you. What Trump announced today isn't just some far-off fantasy. It's a concrete plan backed by real numbers. $195 billion in tariff revenue and climbing. 25% of IRS agents are already gone. Legislation ready to move. The income tax has enslaved American workers for over a century, taking your money before you ever even see it, funding a government that works against you. That era is coming to an end. And President Donald Trump is doing what no president since the income tax was created has had the courage to do. He's killing it. And when it's gone, you'll keep what you earn. Your family will build real wealth. And the IRS will be nothing but a bad memory. So what do you think? Is America ready to end the income tax? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to support our work here, take a look at our merch shop. You'll find a link below.